So we live in a block universe. Some really excellent videos on that by Sabine Hostenfelder and others that describe basically how through physics the entire universe from beginning to end is predetermined. So basically, if you think of it like a series of dominoes, a cause and effect. So effectively, one thing creates another thing, or perhaps there are random things that create things, but none of those are you. So you do not actually create anything. You are just a piece in the machine, a very complicated machine that is unfolding, or actually really has unfolded in the universe. So for this point, it's effectively that there is some theoretical concept that what is going to happen, from our perspective, may have already happened. So effectively you have the entire universe more or less in a frozen state where everything from the Big Bang to whenever it ends is already mapped out, already laid out. Everything that is going to happen has already happened. So this means that all of us are simply replaying a predetermined script. We have this illusion of free will. We have this illusion that we can make decisions and choices that change the outcome of reality. So if I choose A, then this happens. If I choose B, then that happens. Oh no, I made a mistake. I did something bad, and a bad consequence came because of my mistake. Or I worked really hard and I did something amazing, and then an amazing thing happened because of that. I earned my promotion at work. Ooh, I played the lottery. What luck! I won the lottery. Whereas in reality, all of those things are predetermined. All of your decisions are predetermined. You only make the decisions that you make because of everything that happened to make you who you are. And you actually had no choice or control over that. When I visited my grandfather at his memorial site, it's something of a mausoleum. So it's a strange building that's exterior facing. He's got a plaque, and it overlooks the Willamette river, and there's a little koi pond nearby. It's very beautiful, but it's really an impressive place from a different perspective because it's a very sobering place, because there are all of these placards, tombstones on the ground. You know, they don't really make tombstones go up anymore, not so much. It's usually just placards on the ground, in the grass. And there's a sea of them, and that sea is covered with toys, because all of this section of the cemetery, apparently the one that my grandfather's placard looks over, are the gravestones of children. And you go and look, and you'll see dates: born such and such a date, died such and such a date. And they're only 4 days apart, or even 1 day apart. And it's just intense to look at all of those toys and think of all of the children, babies who didn't make it. But that is not their fault. They didn't not make it because of something they did, and you didn't make it because of something you did. So you had no control over being born. And then when you grew up, sometimes some people grew up in households where maybe they had a pool and it wasn't guarded, and they fell into the pool and they died, and they didn't have control over that either. And or being one of the people that had a fence around the pool, or being born to certain parents, or not being born to certain parents, being born in a wealthy family or not wealthy family, being born to supportive parents or unsupportive parents, being born in a rich neighborhood, or a certain skin color, or within a gender that assigned at birth that they agreed with, or that they felt represented them. I mean, there's all kinds of different factors that go into what make a person what they are, and we can agree for the most part that those factors aren't by choice. But then at some point we take over and say, oh, no, 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 but I did these other things. I made a choice. But when you look at physics, theoretical physics, when you look at some of the things that people like Einstein have said, it comes out a different way. That none of this is really a choice. That the only thing that exists is an illusion of choice. So you didn't actually do anything yourself. You had to do it. There's no other way the universe could have gone. The universe only went to this happening. So when you started drinking too much and you got in the car and behind the wheel and you drove and you hit someone and took their life, there was no other way that could have happened. And we don't like that because it suggests that we didn't have responsibility for it. I should have made a different choice. That person should have made a different choice. The person that ran into me should have made a different choice. But in fact, there was no other choice. There was no other way for that to unfold. It had to happen the way it did. And every single tragedy, every single joy or triumph, all of them had to happen exactly the way they did. So you didn't make, even Einstein wasn't someone who made his theories happen. Einstein had to be Einstein. There was no choice about it. He didn't do it because he's special or because he changed the world. That change had already happened. There's a part in Harry Potter 3 where Harry Potter and his uncle are beset by these, they're called Dementors, and there's too many of them and Harry Potter can't do it, and he tries chasing them off but he's unsuccessful. So what happens then is he ends up replaying that scene from a different perspective in time, where he encounters his future self. His future self arrives at the scene and remembers that in this scene he didn't know who had chased the Dementors away. Someone had. And then he realizes that he is the person who chased the Dementors away. And because he knew that he had already done it, he had the knowledge of the future that it had already occurred, then he did it, and he was able to chase the Dementors away in a way in which, without having that knowledge, he thought he wouldn't be able to do. But the thing is, he had seen himself do it already. So he didn't choose to realize this. He knew that it had already happened. He was doing the thing that had already happened. So if any of us had a window into the future, which, again, by theoretical physics already exists, then you would see back into the past and you would see that you had already done the things that they already happened. Just like a memory, when you think about your past, you don't feel bad. Perhaps in the near-term future, you think of, when I caused that accident, and that accident cost someone their life. In the near term, you think, I feel terrible about that. That's really a terrible thing that occurred. But as time progresses, you realize that there's nothing you can do about it. It already happened. So your sense of guilt or shame over what happened in the past diminishes because it makes no sense. You cannot undo the things that have already been done, even if you want to. You can't, in the case where you had an accident, my mother, for example, who's passed on, she was driving a long distance. She fell asleep at the wheel. The car went off to the side of the road, just a little bit off, and there was a person making a turn, waiting for her to pass, except she didn't pass because her car veered off to the side and hit that car right on the driver's side, right behind the driver's door. There was a passenger sitting in that side, sitting there waiting. It was a grandmother, an older woman in her 70s, and she died instantly. So what could happen there? What could have happened differently? My mother then, had to struggle and had to realize that she had been in an accident that had cost someone their life. But it had already happened. So there's no undoing it, and there's no amount of feeling bad about it that makes it not happen. So we have this tendency where we think, if I feel guilty and shame about something, then That's going to mean something. That it's going to, I should feel those things. It's what prevents us from doing bad things in the future. If you were to tell everyone that, hey, all of the bad things you're doing, you have no choice but to do them. That is what happens. It's what has already happened in the future. And if we had the perspective of the future, those things would be unchangeable. But because we live in the now, we have this illusion that we can change those things, when actually we can't. It's an illusion. Because we don't make choices like we think of them. We think of ourselves as making independent choices that we can just decide between two different things. Whereas in reality, the things that you do are based upon your life experiences. They're based upon everything that has happened or is happening in your life at that time. And given the chance to do the exact same thing all over again, you would make the same choice. That even if you replayed it like Groundhog's Day 1,000,000 times, you would do the exact same thing 1,000,000 times. Because everything that led up to that event wasn't really a choice. The fact that you didn't die when you were 4 days old wasn't a choice. The fact that you didn't drown in your parents' pool when you were 2 years old wasn't a choice. And everything that happened up to that wasn't a choice either. That even though you think of them as choices, even though you have this this perception that says, I am thinking about something, I am making a decision, it's not really so. In reality, my mother could not have not gotten into that accident. There was no other thing that could have happened. And the unfortunate truth of the woman who died is that it had to happen. And there wasn't anything that anyone could do about it. That we effectively live our lives by watching a movie. That we see ourselves in these positions. We have a first-person perspective. And we think like a video game character or something like that, that we're able to run around and make certain choices. But it's not really the case. In actuality, we are watching ourselves. We are watching our experience. We are a passenger in the car, not the driver. The driver is time and space. The driver is the universe. The universe lives through us by virtue of all of the cause and effects that have led us to this very moment, none of which we were responsible for. So we are not responsible for the next part either, or the part after that. Everything is just unfolding. So why does that matter? It matters because no matter what terrible thing you've done in your past, it is something that you cannot change and couldn't have prevented. No matter what great thing you've done, or even will do, there isn't any way that you could not have done it. Einstein could not have avoided his theories. There wasn't another universe. We don't live in a different universe other than the universe in which the things that happen exactly the way they did and will in the future. That's the universe we live in. That's the life we live in. Whether our life is 4 days old, 2 years old, or 90 years old has nothing to do with any of our choices. Not as we conceive of it, meaning that we could have made a different choice. Sure, it matters what we did, but if we didn't have responsibility for doing those things, neither are we responsible. It's not truly a choice as we would conceive of it. There was nothing else to do. Just like my mother falling asleep at the wheel and hitting someone wasn't really a choice. Could she have done it a different way that would have avoided that woman's death? No. Those parents who have a child, a baby who dies at 4 days old, there's nothing they could have done either. We have to then accept that the most rational view of the universe is one in which we do not have choice, is one in which we are not responsible for the things that happen, either good or bad. Just like the past, as we look at the past, even if you killed someone, there's nothing you can do about that. So as much as we want to condemn people and as a society say, oh, you are such a bad person because you did such a bad thing, unimaginable thing, what use is it? There's no other way that could have happened, and it already occurred. You can't change it. So one day you're going to be sitting in the last moment of your life looking backwards, and you won't be able to change a thing, whether it was good or bad, no matter how horrible it was. You won't be able to change anything. So where does that leave us? If you're just a passenger, if you don't actually have control of your life, if you don't actually create good or bad things, then where does that leave us? It leaves us with living the life that the universe has decided for us. It leaves us with an understanding that we are neither responsible for the good things we do or the bad. And that's really hard for people to accept, because they want to say, I did it. I did a wonderful thing. I am very smart and capable. I studied. I worked hard and I made something good happen. Or they want to say, don't do this bad thing. My goodness, you killed someone. You were responsible for someone's death. That's horrible. You should feel terrible because of it. You should feel the worst, because we don't want that kind of thing to happen. Imagine if everyone came to this conclusion that even when they do bad things, they're not truly responsible for them. Well, then everyone would act immorally. Everyone would do everything only for selfish interest. Except that also isn't how it works. You don't do a thing for selfish interest. You do a thing because you did it. You don't control your motivations either. So to say that people are just going to switch into this mode where they only do selfish things or only act in self-interest is also wrong, because you don't control how you are motivated or what pushes you forward to do what you do. And even that in and of itself is an illusion. You did what you did. In essence, all of us are self-motivated. Even if you did a good thing, Mother Teresa is saving people, and I think if you look into her story, there is a self-interest element to even the most heroic of things. That ultimately this idea of self-interest is nonsense. This idea of doing things for altruistic reasons is nonsense. None of us are altruistic. Even when we help other people, it is for our own benefit. But it doesn't really matter anyway, because our whole concept of motivation is an illusion. We do the things we do because of what happened to us. We're not responsible for either the good or bad things that we do. We all have the luck of the draw of sitting in the seat in which we sit. You occupy the skin in which you occupy, the person that you are, because of the universe deciding that's what needed to happen. You are not any different from anyone else on the planet. We each simply got assigned a life to live, to play out, and we effectively watch that like you watch a movie. If I watch a movie about Arnold Schwarzenegger, blowing people up, I am not blowing people up. Arnold Schwarzenegger is blowing people up. I'm not living his life. I'm watching him live his life. I'm watching him do these fantastical things. And that's what our lives are. We watch ourselves as we go through life, where there is this illusion that we are in control. That makes it more palatable for us to feel immersed in the experience of being alive. If we didn't feel that, and that illusion didn't exist, then we would probably all feel a lot of despair, because you're just watching things happen that you have no control over. But in essence, that is what happens, because at some points the illusion is going to dissipate, and we watch ourselves do terrible things. And then we're thinking, why am I doing this terrible thing? And that's where the illusion starts to fall apart, because it doesn't make sense. We can't conceive of how we got into this position. We can't conceive of what would motivate us to be in the situation we're in. The situation is so confusing that we can't understand what brought us to it. Sitting in a car, and the front end of that car is just plowed into another car. And the carnage is evident, is obvious. And sitting there thinking, how did I wind up in this situation? And you can't piece it together. The dominoes of chain, the cause and effect, don't fit. Nothing makes sense as to why this has occurred. Because you didn't do it. You're watching a movie. That all of us, while we identify with our own lives, are really watching a movie of someone else's. Because you didn't, all of that is created off this illusion. So if you did a bad or terrible thing, you didn't really do that. Because there's nothing else that could have happened. It's already in the past. If you did an amazing thing, you didn't do that either. As much as you might want to take pride in it or believe that you've done something incredible or think about all the work that it took you to get there, there was nothing else you could have done. There was no other scenario that ever could have happened. Just like when we look at the past, for better or for worse, we can see that nothing else other than what happened could have happened. So when people then take credit for the good things that happen, or blame for the bad things that happen, both of those are nonsense. You're not responsible for either. You lived a life that did either good things, bad things, or a combination thereof. We all live the same life. In essence, because we are all witnessing someone else's life unfurl in front of us, because it's just where you happen to sit down, is the life that you see, the one the universe picked for you to watch. It's like if I watched a movie about people doing really great things, I didn't do the really great things. If I watched a movie about people doing horrible things, I didn't do the horrible things. They're just movies. And because I ended up watching one movie instead of another movie, doesn't make me better or worse. In fact, it makes all of us exactly the same. We're all in the exact same boat. No matter what happens in our life, whether it is 4 days or 90 years, we are all assigned by the universe to sit and watch a movie. And we are not responsible for what happens in that movie. It is what the universe has decided long before you is going to happen. And you're just watching it. So there's no sense in feeling bad for bad things that you have done, or feeling good for good things that you have done, other than that it feels good, perhaps. And that's, again, what you're already going to do because the universe has decided that. So what is the point if we don't actually have any control, if we don't actually do good or bad things? Well, the point is only understanding. There is no other point. The point is to understand what the universe truly is, because every bit of our awareness that strays from what the universe truly is going to cause us a problem. Now, mind you, the fact that you're listening to this is predetermined, and what you do with it is predetermined. I'm not creating something new in the world. It's something that already happened. So I'm just part of what the universe has decided that you need to think about. And that is that there is no sense in feeling special for doing something incredible, winning a Nobel Prize. And there's no sense in feeling bad for doing something bad. The family, everyone in the country is shocked and horrified when some person, with a gun goes out there and does something. But to think that if we all realized that none of us were responsible for that kind of event, that then everyone would run off and do that, is also nonsense, because the universe didn't decide for you to do that, and you didn't make a choice. So that almost implies that there is a choice, that if you knew that your bad actions had no consequences, or weren't, well, they do have consequences, but weren't your responsibility, then you would do bad things. So that implies a choice. That because you've learned now that your bad actions or things that you have done that caused harm weren't your fault or the universe's fault, now you're free to do all the bad things you want to do. But that, again, implies choice, which you don't have. So you don't have the choice to decide, this is my moment to become a psychopath. Which is why that doesn't make any sense. It's better to understand that you and I and every one of the other 7 billion people on the planet are all doing the exact same thing. Whether we are living in a gutter on the street or in the White House, we're all doing the same thing. We're all watching a movie, and none of us are actually responsible for the content of that movie. And that's what unites us and helps us to understand that there isn't better or worse. There aren't people who are smarter than other people. There aren't people who are dumber than other people. There aren't people who work harder than other people. There is no difference between any of us at all, because none of us are responsible for the things that are playing in our lives. We're all exactly the same. And that's a hard thing, because my ego might want to think, I did a fantastic thing. I am to some degree better than someone else. I can look at this other person and laugh at them because look at how an idiot they look like. At least that's not me. At least I'm not doing that stupid thing. Or I can look at someone who's done something horrible and say, oh my God, that person is awful. I am not that awful. Maybe I've done some bad things, but I haven't done anything that bad. But it's nonsense, because they're living a movie. They're sitting in their chair watching a movie the same as I am. It's just a different movie. In their movie, people die. Or in their movie, they win a Nobel Prize. But they're still just watching a movie. The same as me. So that's the premise, is that we are all exactly the same. No matter what our circumstance, no matter what we've done, no matter any of these other indicators that we often think of as superiority, whether that be wealth, health, beauty, intelligence, none of that means anything.